I don't know. I think it's nice. This gentleman here, Nick Miller from the Lost River Drive-In. You know, I watch a lot of different stuff on YouTube. I watch, sports, video games, horror, regular movie stuff, a little bit of politics, just depending on if I want to be depressed or not. And so I'm all over the place. And YouTube sometimes doesn't really know what to recommend to me. So somebody like Nick over at the Lost River Drive-In that's talking all things horror, a huge, not just a big movie fan, but a guy that articulates his opinions very, very well. And he and I have really similar feelings on some movies that don't quite get as much love as some others do. So I don't know why it took so long for YouTube to say, hey, Davey, you should check out Nick. But over the last like 2 or 3 months or so, I really took the deep dive. I like doing the rabbit hole into people's channels. And yeah, man, Nick's coverage over there is great. He does cover news a little bit, but it's mostly like, hey guys, I want to let you know how I feel about this movie, or here's a movie that doesn't get enough love, or maybe I've even overlooked it and now I've realized that I have so much love I just can't contain myself and I have to talk to you guys about it. So guys, without any further ado, let's go ahead and bring in Nick Miller from the Lost River Drive-In. What's happening, Nick? How are you doing, man?
I'm good, man. Can you hear me? Am I loud enough?
I can. Yeah. You are definitely loud enough. If you back off a little bit, it'll probably have a little less bass, but I can hear you. You're good.
I wanted to, well, it might be my gain.
That
Let's see if
that sounded good right there.
Okay, cool.
Yeah, sounds great, man. So
what's up,
Nick,
man?
thank you. Nothing much. Thank you so much for hopping on late night with us. I know it's a little bit later out there for you in Ohio, but really appreciate you, man. One thing, I'm sure you heard my whole gushing intro over there, but one thing that really stands out to me when I watch your content is that you carry the flag for movies that just don't quite get enough love, movies that you feel passionate about. And so, part of me is sort of curious, is this something that, like, have you always kind of been this way where you've always had love for like the underdog? Is there something else in your life? Like, I'm a big punk rock fan. And so I'm just an underdog kind of guy. And I wonder if that's one of the reasons why I like some of the same kind of movies that you do. Give me a little bit of background on that, and what fuels your desire to preach the good word of movies like Rob Zombie's Halloween 2, A Nightmare on Elm Street Part 4, The Dream Master, and let's just get it out of the way. Halloween Ends.
Yeah, so there's been this common misconception by people that have stumbled across my channel before. The people that you don't really see comment again, and I find that happens a lot to me because I have such outlandish takes sometimes. And I've talked before to people like, do you guys think I want to carry the flag for a lot of these people? Like, do you think I want to have a target on my back? Like, I don't seek it out, but yeah, I guess in a way I kind of always have gravitated more toward like the underdogs. There's just something about it that's because I think film, I know film is subjective. And I feel like there's something in every movie for everybody. And I feel like when a majority of people write off one movie and I didn't like it because of this reason. And then you have people that just kind of fall in line with that and they parrot the same thing. And then there's this groundswell. I just don't feel like that's good for entertainment. And it's, so that's part of it, but mainly it is like, I like the quirky. I like the weird, like Halloween 5. I've loved that movie since I was a kid now. And part of that is because it was the first Halloween movie I ever saw. So nostalgia is a hell of a drug there, but I can also, as a almost 30-year-old now, like look at it from this vantage point now and being like, no, it's not just because I saw it, the first one in the Halloween series. It's because like it has a lot of merit to it. So yeah, I definitely do carry the flag for a lot of these weird movies that don't get a lot of love. But one thing I've noticed in recent years is a lot of those movies that I've been on top of the hill screaming about for years are really starting to get their due now. And look no further than a video I made on my channel. I didn't start taking my channel seriously till like 2.5 years ago. I uploaded a couple times when I was a teenager. I never kept up with it at all. But look no further than a video I uploaded over 10 years ago as a teenager, just ranting and raving about how much I loved Halloween 3. And that was still
Mhm.
back then when it was sacrilege. And
Mhm.
now it's almost like it's this accepted thing. Like, yeah, Halloween 3 got a bad rap. And yeah, so it's interesting to see that change with time.
Yeah, and I wonder, some of that makes me think like maybe there's a group of younger people who they've known their whole lives that Halloween 3 is something totally outside. Whereas like the first time I saw Halloween 3 was probably like 1990 or 91 on the USA network. And I'm sitting there just like, I didn't think it was shit, but I was like a little kid. I'm like 9 or 10 years old. And I'm like, what is this? Why is this called Halloween 3? It was just so confusing. But then it sort of gets this new life. I think the first time I saw Halloween 3 was probably like actually sat down and watched it was about like 06, 07. And I thought to myself, well, that's a damn good movie right there. And then I wonder, like, maybe we do see a little bit of that resurgence because there are people that don't have, like you're saying, like the track record and all the word of mouth can be so negative about a movie, but now there's like an audience that gets to look at it with fresh eyes, where it's not kind of poo-pooed from like before they even watched the movie,
Yeah, I mean, I'll say this. I am somebody that, no offense to anybody listening, but look, Gen Z has created a lot of shit that I don't like. But one thing I do like about Gen Z is that in a lot of ways, I feel like there's been this reframing of a lot of things, because they were the next generation after me, and they're able to look at these things with fresh eyes. And Gen
Mhm.
Z comes in, they didn't live through Rob Zombie's Halloween 2 getting released in theaters. So they didn't know what it was like to be a teenager on the Halloween message board and be defending that movie and everybody coming for you. They didn't know that.
Yeah.
They didn't feel the societal pressure to hate that movie. So when they got older and they watched it for the first time, a lot of them, without that pressure, you find a lot of times people can find merit in things. And so
Mhm.
you hear a lot of these people saying positive things about it now, and it's like, thank you. And maybe them speaking up about it is partially feeding into why others are starting to go like, you know what, maybe I was a little tough on that movie. One of the coolest things that's ever happened to me as a content creator, a good friend of mine, Mark, his name is Saturn Video on YouTube.
Mm,
He
mhm.
um, he absolutely could not stand Rob Zombie's Halloween 2 when he first saw it. And he told me that over the years, listening to me talk about it and bringing up why I liked it and just showcasing certain things about it that were strong, he now loves the movie. And I feel like
Mm.
it's cool when that happens, because I myself
Yeah.
have been persuaded by people that I look up to, and so that's really cool. So yeah, again, not to hate on you, Gen Z, if any of you are watching, you guys do have your upsides, and one of them is just y'all don't really give a shit what people think a lot of times. Sometimes that's to your detriment, but like in this case, when it comes to what you think about movies and entertainment as a whole, I feel like it's opened some doors for some of the more old fogies, and it's crazy that I'm getting to that point where I almost feel like that, because I'll be 30 this year, so it's like, holy crap, like I'm almost there. So
Yeah.
it's yeah.
Well, yeah, there's this whole kind of like, well, I'm not going to believe what you say because I have this supercomputer in my hand. So I'm
Mhm.
not going to believe anything anyone says. And then also there is this sort of like, I think when it comes to art and stuff like that, well, let's take a step back and see what it's saying. Like a little bit more of that kind of approach to the younger generation. And yeah, I mean, I think that's one of the most awesome and powerful things about fandom and about the community. When people are willing to not just share their opinions, but share why. It's something that I think you do really well on your channel, is you give the why behind how you feel about something. So somebody can take that, like, and the next time they go watch that movie or consume that art, they can it can kind of help inform their opinion, or they can try to look at it from that perspective and maybe see something brand new that they missed before. I
Yeah.
remember when I first saw Land of the Dead, I saw it at the Cinerama in Hollywood the night that it came out. And I was kind of let down. I mean, it was the first Romero zombie film I had seen in the theater. I love Romero's work. Like Day of the Dead's my favorite zombie film of all time. and I didn't think it was bad. I just thought this could have been better. And then I chatted with a friend of mine who really loved it, and it was like an hour, discussion about this movie. And the next time I watched it, I was like, man, he totally opened my eyes to like the poetry and everything in this movie that just I didn't notice it the first time.
Mhm.
Or, maybe Romero was just a little more heavy-handed in his later days, but I still think he has the touch in that film, and I've grown to really love that film. So I think that's one of the most awesome things about fandom for sure.
Yeah, and Halloween 2 is no different. Halloween 2 is a movie that
Mhm,
I understand why it was a shock to the system. It's not what anybody expected and was not what anybody asked for at the time. But if you look at it from it's just a tragic story of loss
mhm,
and grief. And honestly, I've said it a million times on my channel. I'll say it again and again. It is really at its core about sometimes, man, as much as we don't like to admit it, sometimes the demons win. Sometimes it's not always a
hmm,
happy ending.
yeah,
And that sucks. And I actually think that that is really important as a human being to understand fictionalized, to watch it fictionalized, because like sadly that is a real thing. And as a
mhm,
person with empathy, to be able to watch that unfold on screen and be like, holy crap, man, like it really kind of it humanizes those people even more and that story even more. And I think it also
mhm,
helps you in your day-to-day life, with sometimes it puts more emphasis on you to be there for people that are struggling, because it's that constant reminder you don't always come out of it. And it's sucks to admit that, but it is what it is. And so I give
yeah,
Rob Zombie just loads of credit for doing that, and I give Malik Akkad loads of credit too for letting him do that. He told Rob when he came back, "I want you back." Rob didn't want to do it. He was like, "And I'll let you have carte blanche. Do whatever
mhm,
you want," and that's why Rob came back. So I do feel like it'll continue to age better with time. I understand though. I'm sure you've noticed in my videos, I never, ever, ever say you have to think this way. This is how
sure,
it is, and you have to accept that. You get comments all the time, but people want to argue, and I'm like, guys, I always say like this is just my perspective. Like if it
yeah,
doesn't work for you still, just because I just want people to understand things sometimes. You don't have to like it. Like you can understand
mhm,
it and see that point of view and be like, okay, I see what the filmmaker was trying to do, but it's still not my cup of tea. And I can respect that conversation. I can't
yeah.
respect the conversation of, nah, it's shit. It's stupid. And I'm like, well,
Yeah.
you
Yeah, to
know,
not have at least something to sort of back it up. I mean, if anything, just to be able to articulate why you think it should. I think, something that I say here is like a smarter audience is going to make sure that the art is going to be better because we're going to be a little bit pickier about it, but we can also articulate how we feel. So we're going to hold the filmmakers and the studios to account, and then yeah, with those discussions we have back and forth, we're actually diving deep into why it works or why it doesn't work. And yeah, I mean, I'm right there with you on Rob Zombie's Halloween 2. I saw here Trisha McMaster said, I'm an 80s baby. I don't like Rob Zombie's Halloween 2. Well, Trisha, I was born in 1982 and I love that movie. I think I love when there's a huge franchise and you take chances. So I applaud the chance being taken. And even, it's not just that does it for me. I think it's the fact like the remake doesn't do much for me because I just think it's kind of unnecessary.
and
It
it's
doesn't
tried and
really,
true. It didn't break any new
yeah,
ground.
yeah, and it's almost like you could watch the original Halloween and then you could follow it up with Rob Zombie's Halloween 2. And
Yeah,
yeah, it
here's the
kind of
what if
rewrites the end.
scenario. Yeah,
Yeah, but it
yeah.
like sort of works in this strange way. And he sort of tapped into that whole trauma thing before, well before it was in chic for sure.
Mhm.
Yeah, I remember a buddy of mine when I finally watched it, he was like, "Oh, how'd you enjoy that piece of shit?" And I was like, "Oh my God, that was amazing." And he's like, "Are you serious?" And I was like,
Yeah,
yeah, I really
I
enjoyed that.
look,
Like, I
when I was it came out in '09, so a couple years later, I was 17. And my or fudge, I was like 17, and I was hanging out with my uncle one day, and he was like, "Let's go rent some movies." And I picked out Halloween 2. I was like, I know this is not my uncle. He is a very ultra Christian conservative kind of man. Like you would not think that he is like, I'm gonna go for Rob Zombie's Halloween 2. Like it's just not up his alley. But he was like, I
Mhm.
want you to pick something you like. I want you to tell me why you like it. And I want us to watch it together. And I remember sitting there the whole time, like, oh God, he's hating this, dude. Like, he's hating it. And when it was over, he was like, I actually really liked that. He was like, it was like dark, and not in a sense of like being violent. It was just like, is depressing. It was sad.
Yeah.
Like you cared. And I was like,
Mhm.
yes. And I still to this day don't think there's a more emotional moment in the entire series than Lori finding Annie. I do not think
Yeah.
there's anything in the series that reaches that peak. I really don't.
Yeah, I mean, that whole yeah, I mean, even when Brackett finds her, that's,
Oh, yep.
Brad Dourif's performance there is unreal. Yeah, the emotion and I mean, there's so much weight, I think, in that film. And, people will completely forget about that. They don't like that, Michael talks in one of the versions, or, you pick a couple of moments that you don't like about it, and it's like, but there's so much more to a film like that.
Mhm.
Yeah, even Michael not wearing his mask, I was like, well, this kind of works for me. I like that when he puts on his mask, it's like Superman putting on his costume, like it's time to get to work. It's like
Yep.
that's kind of
Yep.
a cool way of looking at that for sure. And yeah, I mean, gosh, yeah, like Halloween 2 by Rob Zombie, very underappreciated. I think especially when you look at his whole body of work, I think it still stands out as one of the more unique pieces, and really where he started like kind of finding his own sort of voice, I
And
think,
and
as a
isn't
young director.
isn't that crazy, Dave? Isn't it crazy that Rob Zombie's most original, unique idea was a sequel to a remake of a film that's over 30 years old at the time? That is
Yeah,
insane that you
yeah.
are working with something you did not create, and it's probably his most creative movie. That's good shit.
Yeah, yeah, and it takes chances that so many of the other movies didn't have the balls to take, except for maybe Halloween Ends. Halloween Ends did take some pretty big chances there. How do you now? Do you think we both love Halloween Ends, but do you think it would have been better if we got to see Corey in Halloween 2018? Maybe just a little peppering, just to plant that seed.
I have always said that when I've talked to people about it, I do agree, mainly because I like Corey a lot, and I would have liked
Hmm.
to have seen him throughout the trilogy. I still will maintain, though, I don't think it's necessary that he needed to be in 18. Would I have been okay with it,
Hmm.
and would it have made his arc maybe that much more tragic? Of course, absolutely. But
Yeah.
I feel like they gave us enough in ends to
Mm.
go on that journey with him because he gets most of the movie. Like, let's just be honest, it's his
Yeah.
movie. And so I feel like there was enough there to buy into his story. But I absolutely will concede and never argue. Yeah, I would have loved for him to have been introduced earlier. Absolutely.
Yeah. Yeah, I thought like it would have been cool if maybe, because you get the idea that he's a smart kid. He just comes from a family that's not too wealthy, so that's why he has to like work after high school. I'm like, it would have been cool if, if they had known where it was going to go, to have him be in like the National Honor Society with Allison. Maybe him and Allison are kind of study buddies. Cameron doesn't like it. Maybe Cameron's kind of picked on him their whole lives, something like that. And it's like
Yeah.
something that
Yeah.
you don't even like, it's innocuous. You don't even like think much of it. And then it kind of comes back full
Yeah.
circle where
And
now him and Allison are together. And
And you've seen a lot of complaints, I'm sure you've heard it as well, of people being like, "And I just didn't buy into Corey and Allison's relationship. Like all of a sudden they're just together." And it's like,
yeah.
guys, I don't know how much life you've lived, but I can tell you, as somebody that has been through some traumatic things in 30 years of life, there is a such thing as trauma bonding. And there is absolutely a
Mm-hmm.
such thing as like you kind of skip past the small talk when someone it's an energy. I don't know. Like you
Yeah.
gravitate towards each other and you lean on each other in a moment where you need somebody that understands you. And so like
Yeah.
I never really got bothered by that because I was like, I've been there. I mean, I've been there where I've had a fling with a girl and it's just it's hot and heavy and you're like, "Oh, this is it. This is the real deal." And a week later, you don't remember her name. Like it's
Yeah.
trauma bonding is
Yeah.
real, guys.
Yeah, and like, yeah, I think people that after you go through a tragic event or something traumatic, it's like you are going to be perhaps more vulnerable to somebody that has that in common with you. So you will like open yourself up more. Yeah, and she's kind of going through her own sort of transformation, into adulthood. So it seems like she's on her own like wacky kind of orbit, and then they just happen to kind of hop on the same orbit together for a little bit. Yeah. It's and I even tell, you know, I understand. I don't even know. I haven't been watching the chat too much. I know not everyone loves this movie. I
Not a lot
understand
of
why
hate.
people don't like it.
I'm not seeing hate in there, man. I'm really
That's
not.
great. Oh, Halloween Ends is definitely top 5. All right. Yeah. For me, it's like, I'm like, is it my second favorite in the franchise? I don't know. Cause there was something about it. I, you know, went in, saw it in IMAX, and I was just like smiling ear to ear the whole entire time. Like I bought in right from the very, very beginning, loved every bit of it, and was kind of surprised that it ended up being as divisive as it was. Cause I was like, man, I thought I was like a tried and true Halloween fan, but I guess like, yeah, I mean, whatever. I'm sort of a weirdo.
Let me tell you what that was like walking out of the theater and getting online. I had no idea. I saw it opening night and I went with my brother who really couldn't give a shit less. And when it was over, he was like, "Yeah, I liked that." And I was like, "Okay, cool. Like if this normie liked it, most people are going to be cool with it." No. Oh my
Yeah.
God, dude. And I did my review that night, which thank you, YouTube algorithm. Anytime I do Halloween, YouTube is like, here, guys, watch this guy. I've been
Yeah.
boxed in. And because of that, man, that was the worst barrage I got in my time
Mhm.
on YouTube. Those few days after my review and my short reaction out of the theater, thousands and thousands of views, hundreds of comments. I mean, people telling me to do a lot of things to myself. But it was cool because at the same time, I met a lot of people that felt as strongly as I did about that movie. And
Mhm.
I went into that movie terrified. It was no secret. I have a podcast with my buddy Christian Hanna, and we knew the plot leaks about who Corey
Mhm.
was, and I was like, oh, this is gonna suck so bad. And I went in like trepidatious, and yeah, man, I'll tell you what, when the shots around the house were going, and then you had the shot of the mask on the table, and as soon as Don't Fear the Reaper started up, I actually like my eyes welled up. I was like, oh man, no. It's just, yeah, it's a cool feeling, man. I mean, the franchise means everything to me. And I get that
Yeah.
it wasn't for everyone. That's fine, but it sure shit did what it needed to do for me.
Yeah, and I think maybe it'll be one of those movies that, you know, 10, 15 years down the road, I think people are going to feel a lot differently about it. Especially like you said, knowing what people read about it before they go into it, knowing kind of what to expect. Yeah, I don't even know if I saw leaks. It was just an interview that David Gordon Green did where he flat out said, yeah, there's this character named Corey Cunningham, and he's, you know, kind of partners up with Michael, and he's a main part of the story. And so just knowing that, I was like, well, I'm prepared. And man, I loved every bit of it. And my wife, who's a casual horror fan, like she's, you know, big into Scream. She really loves those. She really likes Friday the 13th, but she didn't really get into horror until we started dating about like 9.5 years ago. So when we both walked out of there, she was like, man, that was really good. And I'm like,
Yeah.
all right, same
Yeah.
kind of thing where I was like, okay,
Yeah.
cool. Cause it could go either way with somebody that's not
Wow.
necessarily a fan.
Yeah, my ex-wife, she had the reaction after that movie of that was just a love story about her motorcycle. That movie was stupid. And obviously she was really diminishing it, but that was when I should have known. That was when I should have known.
Yeah.
This is not
You
gonna work.
know, you have those feelings and you just gotta lean into them. When you know, you
Yeah.
know.
But yeah, I mean, it like everybody's saying in the chat, it was really exciting and it was really refreshing. And you know, I wanted a longer, I still want a longer break for the series.
Mhm.
And you know, hopefully Miramax doesn't pump out this TV series or whatever the hell they're going to do too quickly, because I feel like Ends needs to sit with people for a while. I'm
Yeah.
cool with where we're at for a couple years.
Yeah, I think they'll probably plan something for the 50th, or at least
Mhm.
yeah, maybe give us a tease at the 50th. I would imagine like with the TV show for me, like if they really want to just go back to Michael, I don't quite get that for the TV show. I would love to see a TV show that's actually I've talked about it a couple times on the channel, that's like a what if scenario where each season is its own contained season, and it picks up where one of the dead ends leaves off. So we
Mhm.
get a Season of the Witch remake or follow up. You get Danielle Harris to come back and like finish the Jamie arc. If shit, you could bring Josh Hartnett back and do a real H2O
Hell
follow up.
yeah.
Like you know, you could even bring Rob Zombie back and have him direct a season, or just executive produce a season and direct the first and last episode, or you know what I mean? It would be, I think that would be kind of cool, because you know, you've seen the Halloween tree where it's all these
Mhm.
different paths. And it's like, man, that would be, you know, maybe not for a general audience, but for all the people that are horror fans and Halloween fans, I think that would be like a really fun way to kind of give us something to keep us going. And then if you want to bring Michael back on the 50th, you can do that.
Yeah, and quite frankly, when it comes to Halloween, like if I was not excited for a series, and I'm still not excited for a series.
Yeah.
But if you want to get really creative and weird like that, I'm in. Like I'm totally in. And the only way I want to see it happen is if they're going to do something like that. I don't want this. Let's go back to a prequel of young Michael Myers and tell what
Yeah.
happened. I have absolutely zero interest in that. And I feel like
Mm-hmm.
most Halloween fans do. I can tell you that the rumors for a while were, and the one that I wanted to win out personally was building off of Halloween 3, whether it be before what happened in that movie or after what happened. And
Mm-hmm.
I really wanted to see that. And that got thrown by the wayside because Malik Akkad, you know, he's obviously a product of his father. And he's like, no, it's got to have
Mm-hmm.
Michael Myers. We got to do Michael Myers.
Mm-hmm.
So what I have heard as recent as a couple months ago was that it's going to be focused on the town of Haddonfield as a whole, and that
Mm-hmm.
the town of Haddonfield it's almost infected. There's always this specter hanging over the town, no matter what time of year it is. And it's not just because of Michael Myers. Michael Myers is almost a product of that. And
Yeah.
what's the lore of this town? What else happens in
Mm-hmm.
this town? And of course, Michael Myers would be peppered in, and I thought that was a cool idea. I definitely did. And especially from what I had heard, it was, you know, they were interested in making it a period piece too, back in the 60s or 70s
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
before. So like that's really cool. Now, again, that I'm not saying that's what's going to happen, but I had heard that. So if that's what they're doing, I'm down. But like I said, if
Mm-hmm.
we're going in the direction of prequel, young Michael Myers telling the story of what happened on that Halloween night, 1963, I don't care. Like I
Yeah.
don't care. And I can tell you that the worst part of Rob Zombie's Halloween, the first half. The second half
Yeah.
is a fun breakneck remake. It plays a
Mm-hmm.
lot of the same beats, but it's fast paced and it's fun and it's got likable enough characters. The first half, just despicable characters. It gives unnecessary exposition that I did not need at all. And I'm just sitting
Yeah.
there every time I watch that movie going, come on, let's get to the second half. Let's get to the second half. Like I'm over this.
Exactly. Yeah, like I don't want Michael to seem like every other serial killer ever that started out torturing animals and stuff. Like to me, what makes him intriguing is the mystery and the idea that it just like happened for some reason or for no reason, and that he is that mix between supernatural and human. It's almost like the most, you know, that long tracking shot in Halloween 18, and then there's some stuff in the original Halloween 2, just watching Michael walk around. Like to me, that's really
Mhm.
gripping, interesting stuff. I don't know what it is. It's not really his process, but in a way, it kind of is Michael's process, at least the way they've shown it to us. I just love like who he decides to kill, who he doesn't decide to kill. Like it's all so random, like a shark swimming in a dark ocean, just like bumping into rocks, you know? And it's there's something about that with Michael that I know they're so tempted to try to explain the mystery, but it's like the mystery is what makes Michael the best.
Yeah, and Halloween Ends really played on that. That's another reason I liked Ends is that it was like, this is just a man. Like it is a man, but there is no motive there. He doesn't care
Hmm.
about Laurie Strode. That's
Yeah.
not his driving force. Like they've always ended up in each other's paths by happenstance, and I
Hmm.
liked that a lot. But I also really like the fact that Ends was the first movie to really go well, Halloween 6 to a degree, and Halloween 4, I guess. But Ends really leaned
Hmm.
into how has this changed the town of Haddonfield, and and
Yeah.
and Ends was the first movie that really addressed the specter hanging over the town, and
Hmm.
literally in the sense of Corey eventually becoming infected himself. So I just thought
Yeah.
that that was really cool. And you know, I mean, it is. Look, we can talk in circles about what we want to see. You and I both know we're not going to end up seeing what we want to see. Like it ain't going to happen. It's
Unless
going to be
we raise
some.
the money and make it ourselves.
Yeah, yeah. So, but yeah, it's I get it. You know, I love the discourse. I love talking about these kind of things with people, and I like to hear other people's opinions about it. Absolutely. But the chat seems to agree as well. Let's take a break from Michael for a little bit. You know, I'm still sitting
Yeah.
here waiting for Freddy. Like I love Freddy
Sure.
Krueger. He's my number two. And it's like, where the hell is
Mm.
Freddy at? Like I'm
Yeah.
over this.
Yeah, you know, in a way, I think I wish that the Horror Inc. with Friday the 13th and then the Craven Estate would just take a little bit of a, you know, a bit out of Malik's playbook. And one thing that I didn't know much about Malik other than, you know, watching behind the scenes stuff, but I, you know, bumped into him at H45 a couple of times at an after party, and the guy was just a man of the people. He was like engaged. He was walking up to fans and engaging them.
Hmm.
He had a couple of drinks in him and he was really fun for it. As a result, it wasn't weird at all. It was actually like the most charming I've ever seen somebody that's got a couple drinks in him. I was like, dang, dude, I wish I could be like that when I drink, but I'm a friggin' mess. But yeah, he was just like, you could tell that I mean, obviously he's like, yes, my property has a good future because look at all these people, but he just seemed so appreciative. And he did like take the time to say like, you know, we don't play around with Michael. He's like, Dr. Pepper reached out to me. They wanted to do an ad where they like kind of made a joke out of him. And I was like, no, we're not going to, you know, just like even getting little tidbits like that, where I was like, Malik gets Michael, but also understands that like the fans need that content, and not just the movies or not just all the merchandise, but the movies as well, which, you know, that whole Jason universe thing seems like it's more about selling Jason as like, you know, something that you would buy at like a Circle K or some sort of convenience store, rather than, you know, giving us the full Monty and letting us get the movie version. But yeah, I'm right there with you with Freddie. I think that Freddie is long overdue. I mean, he ruled in the 80s when I was a kid. He was just the guy, you know, and he was almost, by the time that I was conscious of who he was, sort of friendly in a way. At least like he was just so entertaining, you know.
Yeah,
So
there was there's something oddly comforting about him, and it's weird, but I feel like it plays into just like that age. It transports you back to a
yeah.
place and time. But you know, really quickly, I do want to just say the stories that Sean Clark has told me about Malik Akkad. Look, that's not bullshit. He really is a good dude that cares about the
Mhm.
fans. That really, Sean told Christian and I, Malik was taking calls about the future of the series from like investors and people interested before Ends even came out. Like it had
Yeah.
been filmed and they were marketing it, and you had people calling him A24, Miramax. Hey, we want to work with
Mhm.
you with Halloween. And so a lot of people wondered, and myself included, that 10-year gap or 9 years between 18 and Rob Zombie's Halloween 2. People were like, oh, he just doesn't care about the fans. They don't want to put anything new out. It's not it at all. None of it was Malik's fault. I did a deep dive on my channel months ago of all the unmade Halloween scripts. And
Mhm.
I feel like it was illuminating for a lot of people. Like one of them didn't get started because 2 weeks before filming, they were like, we're going to film in Bulgaria. And Malik Akkad was like, no, we're not. Haddonfield is middle America. We're shooting it in America or we're not making a movie. And they were like,
Yeah.
well, we're not paying that much to shoot it in America. And he said, all right, no movie then. Like, so
Yeah.
it's things like that where he's not willing to sacrifice certain things. And some,
He's
some fans, some cynical fans will be like, oh, really? Then why do you make that piece of shit Halloween Ends? Like, regard that's your opinion, but he puts money into these movies. He cares about these movies. He tries to, in
Mhm.
every movie, get an actor that is a big deal. Name a Halloween
Yeah.
movie that doesn't have an actor in it that's at least a mildly big deal. Every
Yeah.
single one has one. So,
Yeah.
it's just one of those things where Halloween will never, and Malik Akkad told Sean, and Sean told us this. Malik Akkad said he will die before he lets Michael Myers go straight to DVD. It will never happen. So
Yeah.
that's
Wait,
big deal.
yeah, and almost happened about 22 years ago, and they avoided that, thank God. Yeah, he is quality control, and I do love that he's willing to stand up for it, and I, you know, if even if you don't like the David Gordon Green trilogy, there one thing that you can say about it is that those guys got to make their trilogy. You know, it wasn't
Yep.
studio interference, and
And it made half a
but
billion dollars. So I think
yeah.
Malik was pretty happy.
No, it made, yeah, a shitload of money, and I could tell by how happy he was at age 45 that it worked out well for him. He's like, "I still have these people. This is amazing." Yeah. And Halloween Ends, man, it got a lot of love at that convention too. Like Rowan Campbell had a nice fat line, you know. It's funny how people, you know, maybe they get behind the keyboard and they say certain things, but then when they actually show up and you can actually meet Anthony Michael Hall, even
Mhm.
if you don't love his Tommy, or you can meet Rowan Campbell. It's a totally different thing where you get to show that appreciation, which is why I really want Paul Rudd to put all that weird stuff
Come
aside
on,
and show up
Paul.
to H50.
Yeah.
People will walk up and want you to sign Tommy stuff. They're not going to bring their Ant-Man crap. I mean, not saying that Ant-Man's crap. I'm just saying I don't think Paul has the best like feeling about Halloween, but
No,
man,
he doesn't understand. He doesn't understand how rabid this fan base is, and how much money, frankly, he could make at a convention showing up to sign as Tommy Doyle and stuff. And I get it. He feels like he's moved on to bigger things, and Josh Hartnett too. You know, moved on to bigger things. I get all that, but never forget where you came from, because these people, they love you. And Sean Clark told me too, same thing you said. He was like, bro, on the internet, people say all this shit about Rowan. Every convention, he has the biggest line. Every single convention. And Rowan, I had a buddy have Rowan sign a photo for me and send it to me. And I was like, when he was in line, I was like, hey, if I send you a voice message, will you show it to Rowan? He was like, yeah. So I sent a voice message to Rowan. It was like a minute long. A couple minutes later, I get a message from my buddy and I open it, and it's Rowan Campbell holding my buddy's phone, and he's like giving me a thumbs up. And I was like, no shit. He was like, yeah, he listened to your message and he said it really meant a lot to him. And I was like, dude, that's so cool, because I wasn't able to go to 45, but I love that for him. And I have been, I'm telling you, dude, I've been putting my nose down, and I have been trying so hard to get Rowan onto my channel. And I almost asked Michelle Dawson, who played Nurse Deb, when I interviewed her on my channel, I almost was like, hey, can you get me in contact with Rowan? But I was like, I'm not going to do that. She's like, yeah, I still talk to Rowan like all the time. I was like, I'm not going to do that. I'll just meet him at a con and I'll ask him. But I just feel like it's important, because that guy is a great actor. I hope he does amazing things with his career. And no matter what the keyboard warriors say online, I hope he understands a lot of people love him for that role.
Oh yeah.
And
he was absolutely incredible in the role. And your interview there with Michelle was awesome. I love that interview. Rowan was super sweet. Getting to meet him, he was really fun loving, cracking jokes. My wife was like so happy to get to put her arm around him for a picture. And he was, during the panel, he was like, he'd been a lifelong Halloween fan, which I didn't know until seeing the panel. And when he read for it, it didn't have the title and all that. So he didn't really know exactly what he was auditioning for. So it was a really cool story just for him, you know? And so, yeah, man, keep at it. You'll get to bring him on your channel and ask him all about that. That would be amazing.
Man, I freaking hope so. But if it doesn't end up happening, that's fine. I simply just want to one day be in the same room as him and just be like, hey man, I want you to know you matter. Okay. I'm sure he knows that, but yeah, it's just really cool. This fan base gets a lot of shit online. A lot of people will say it is the most toxic fan base. And I'm sure you've heard that from Cody Leach, and Cody's a good friend. I love Cody. I've had Cody on a couple times. We've had him on the podcast. Cody's a great guy. He's not wrong in the sense that like this fan base is the most passionate. They are the most outspoken. That brings a lot of toxicity. It also at times brings a lot of positivity. And at the end of the day, it's just because there's a lot of love there. But I'll tell you, Scream's getting there. Scream is getting there, challenging Halloween for the toxicity title.
I think maybe even more, at least on Twitter. I'm like, every time I open up Twitter, it's people that want Melissa Barrera to be in every single movie ever, and taking really hardlined, interesting political stances about these whodunit slasher movies.
I know, right? I know. It's like,
it's wild.
Like, look, I get it. We can agree that like with anybody, we should all have a right to say whatever we want to say. That is our right in this country. That's totally fine. But am I going to cancel Scream 7 even though they're bringing Nev Campbell back?
Yeah.
Nah, I'm good. I'll be there. I mean, you do you, but I'm going to be there. So I don't know.
Me too. Absolutely. All right. Well, thank you so much for spending time with us, Nick. I see Max is hanging out. Dude, me too. It's a problem, man. I was the fifth of 5 kids, and I like spent a lot of time looking in the mirror, making faces and talking to myself. So now that there's like actually people that are kind of willing to listen, it's like, the leash is off. Real quick though, because we had talked, I know you're a Pittsburgh Steelers fan. Yes. What is your prediction for the Steelers record this year, and who do you think is going to be the starting quarterback by the end of the season?
Okay, so look, they signed Russell Wilson. I was like, Maybe he has a
Yeah.
little left in the tank, but even then, he's just a stopgap. I really wanted Justin Fields. He's very athletic. He has a ton of upside.
Yeah.
I was like, I
Yeah.
just trade for him. And then they traded for him. And I was like, hell yes. Why did we sign Russell Wilson now? Damn it. Look,
Because he cost $800,000.
yeah, true. And he's a vet. He's been there, done that. And if there is any juice left in that tank, it is worth it at a vet minimum, of course. Look, I was optimistic, and then the schedule came out, and I was like, oh my God, that is brutal. And by advanced metrics, I'm not even kidding you, Warren Sharp, he's a NFL guy, he tweets analytics and stuff. He said, by advanced metrics, the Pittsburgh Steelers in 2024 have the hardest back end of their schedule in the last 30 years in league history. So I was like, sick, dude. That's awesome. Look, I'm going to go ahead and say that still, come hell or high water, this team will never have a losing record so long as Tomlin is their coach. And I do not celebrate mediocrity. I'm so tired of that. I'm about ready to kick Tomlin out the door. I'll tell you that, but he doesn't lose. So, and they usually win games they shouldn't. So I'm going to go with a ceiling of 12-5. That's a ceiling, 12-5.
Oh, that's very,
realistic, 10-7. I think they get a wild card spot. And believe it or not, I think Russ plays the whole season. I really do.
Damn. All right.
I think that is because, look, Matt Fauci at Fauci Cinema, I know you know Matt. He hates Russell Wilson because he thinks he just burned the Broncos to the ground. He actually had a pretty decent year last year. He was on a shitty team, and he had a coach that didn't want to work with him.
The Seahawks burned the Broncos to the ground.
Yes. Now he has a coach that wants to work with him. He's in a much better situation. He's on a much better team with our team than he was with Denver last year. So he's set up to succeed. So if he has just at least a little bit in the tank, he'll be good enough. I do think Justin Fields is the future, though. And I will say, if Russell Wilson struggles in the first couple weeks of the season, bench his ass. I don't care what he's done in this league. I'm not waiting 10 weeks to see Justin Fields. If we're in week 3 and Wilson looks like Kenny Pickett last year, get him out. Period.
Well, especially you guys have all your divisional games in the last 2 months, right? So that's going to be that's going to be that's a pretty unique way for the NFL to set that up. So
we have a stretch of 4 of 5 games are divisional games. Yeah.
That's wild.
And then after the Ravens game, 4 days later is the Chiefs on 4 days rest. So, thanks.
Yeah. Nah, somebody's got to play them. Yeah. Well, thank you so much, Nick. Really appreciate you hanging out with us. I can't wait to, get back on here with you. Just so everyone knows in the chat, Nick and I are planning on doing, speaking of Rob Zombie's Halloween 2, in August for the 15th anniversary, we're going to be hopping on with, Lee from Drum Dums, and we're going to be putting together a celebration retrospective video about Rob Zombie's Halloween 2. So I really look forward to collecting all those thoughts with you guys and putting together something really fun for us weirdos that like that awesome movie. Yes. And please check the links in the description below for Nick's YouTube channel and all that good stuff. Go ahead, Nick. Say your last word here.
Look, to any of you guys that don't know me, I recognize a lot of you in the chat. Some of you that I don't recognize, if you have the time, stroll on over to my channel, The Lost River Drive-In. Check me out. Dave, I will go ahead and share this on my community tab as well to hopefully get some of my viewers over here, because I got to tell you something. I'm not just saying this to butter you up. You have a very good talking voice. You really do. And I think that matters. It really matters in YouTube. And my presentation isn't A+ right now because I'm using my webcam because I couldn't find it. It's a long story regardless. So, but you have good presentation. You speak well. You're intelligent. You keep doing this and you're going to start to see the fruits of that. It takes time, brother. I mean, it really, really does. And if I can just caution you for one thing, never, ever, ever lose sight of what's most important in your life, though, because I'll be honest with you guys, I focused a little too hard on the podcast and on YouTube for a little bit there. And I feel like it played a role in my marriage not working out. And so never lose sight of what is most important to you guys. And whether it's you listening or you, Dave. And I appreciate you having me on, man. I really, really do. And you guys ruled. Thank you for the chat, keeping it positive when we were talking about so many divisive movies. And
The rare
again,
thing here at the Davey Death Ray channel.
it's rare for me too.
Yeah.
But yeah, and again, dude, I'm sorry. I know when you messaged me, you were like, yeah, it'd be like 15, 20 minutes. And here we are 45 minutes later after I yapped that. I just, yeah, so
It's
I
quite all
apologize.
right, man. I'm the same way. Thank you again, Nick. Yeah, very sweet words. And of course, yeah, it's all about finding that balance. And sometimes that's checking in every day to make sure you're keeping that balance. So really
Yes.
appreciate you, Nick. Guys, please check out the Lost River Drive-In down in the links in the description below. And that is all for Nick. He's going to be pulling out right about now. So there we go.
Sure.
Thank you, Nick. Have a great rest of your night, man.